Jake Miller pressed his hand against the control panel as his ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed all around him in the small cockpit. The enemy had hit them hard during the last attack, and now his reconnaissance ship was floating dead in space. "Amy, how bad is it?" Jake called out to the back of the ship where Dr. Amy Ross was checking the damage. "We lost main power and life support is failing," Amy replied, her voice tight with worry. "We have maybe 6 hours of air left, and the communication system is completely dead." Jake looked out the front window at the empty space around them. They were far from any human ships or colonies. The battle had moved on without them, leaving only floating pieces of destroyed ships and the cold darkness of space. "Wait," said Kate Adams from her seat at the sensor station. "I'm picking up something on the emergency frequency. It's very weak." Jake turned to look at her. Kate was young but very good with the ship's equipment. If anyone could find help out here, it would be her. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. "It looks like a distress beacon, but—" Kate stopped and checked her readings again. "It's not using human codes. This is definitely alien." Amy moved up behind them, floating easily in the zero gravity. "Alien? You mean Elvani?" The Elvani were their enemies in this war. They looked almost human, but had pointed ears and lived much longer. They were also very proud and considered humans to be nothing more than young barbarians who had learned to use weapons. "Has to be," Kate said. "The signal is coming from about 2 kilometers away. There's a small ship there, but it's badly damaged." Jake thought about this carefully. Military rules were clear about enemy contacts. They were supposed to avoid them or destroy them if possible, but these rules were written for normal situations, not when you were stuck in space with only hours to live. "Can you tell how many are on that ship?" Jake asked. Kate worked with her controls for a minute. "The readings are strange, but I think there's only one life form, and whoever it is, they're in bad shape." "This is crazy," Amy said. "We can't help the enemy. What if it's a trap?" Jake looked at the empty space around them. "What trap? We're already dead out here. Our ship can't move, and no one knows where we are." He thought about his choices. They could wait here and slowly run out of air, or they could try to reach the alien ship. Maybe they could help each other survive. "I'm going over there," Jake decided. "Jake, no," Amy protested. "If Command finds out we helped an enemy soldier, they'll court-martial us." "Only if we live long enough for them to find out," Jake replied. He was already putting on his spacesuit. "Kate, can you guide me to their ship?" Kate nodded, though she looked worried. "Yes, but be careful. That ship looks like it could break apart at any moment." Jake checked his suit's air supply and tools. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, try to signal any human ships that might come looking for us." The trip to the alien ship was dangerous. Jake had to push himself through space using small thruster packs, avoiding floating pieces of metal and other debris from the battle. When he reached the damaged vessel, he could see that it was much more advanced than human ships. The design was smooth and curved, almost like it had been grown rather than built. The ship had a huge hole in its side. Jake could see that the inside was filled with some kind of breathable atmosphere, but it was leaking out slowly. He found an airlock that was still working and managed to get inside. The interior of the ship was beautiful, even damaged as it was. Everything seemed to be made of materials that glowed softly with their own light. But Jake didn't have time to admire alien technology. He found the pilot in what looked like the main control room. She was unconscious and trapped under a piece of the broken ceiling. Jake could see immediately that she was Elvani. Her ears were pointed and her skin had a slight silver color to it. She was tall and thin, wearing clothes that looked like they were made for someone very important. But what surprised Jake most was how young she looked. Most of the Elvani soldiers he had seen were clearly much older, even though they appeared to be in their 30s or 40s. This one looked like she might be 25 in human years. Jake carefully moved the debris off her and checked for injuries. She had a bad cut on her head, and her left arm was clearly broken. but she was breathing, and her pulse felt strong. "Okay, let's get you out of here," Jake said quietly, even though he knew she couldn't understand him. Getting her back to his ship was even more difficult than the trip over. Jake had to carry the unconscious alien while navigating through the dangerous debris field. By the time he got back to his own ship, he was exhausted and nearly out of air. Amy was waiting for him at the airlock, and her eyes went wide when she saw what he was carrying. "Jake, have you lost your mind?" she whispered. "That's an Elvani officer. Look at those clothes and jewelry. She's probably high-ranking." "She's also badly hurt," Jake replied, bringing the alien to the small medical area. "Can you help her?" Amy stared at him for a long moment. "You realize this could be considered treason?" "Amy, she's dying. Whatever else she is, she's a person who needs help. Isn't that what doctors are supposed to do?" Amy looked at the unconscious alien, then at Jake's determined face. Finally, she sighed and began to examine the patient. "Her bone structure is different from humans, but not too different," Amy said as she worked. "I can set the broken arm, but I'm not sure about alien medicine. What if human treatments hurt her?" "Do your best," Jake said. "If we don't try, she'll definitely die." As Amy worked to treat their unexpected patient, Kate kept monitoring the space around them for any signs of rescue or danger. Jake watched the alien's face as she slept. He wondered what she would think when she woke up and found herself being cared for by her enemies. He also wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. But as he looked at her peaceful face, Jake knew he had made the only choice he could live with. Whatever happened next, at least he had tried to save a life instead of just watching someone die. The alien stirred slightly, and Jake held his breath. Soon, she would wake up, and then they would find out if his gamble had been worth it. The alien woman woke up slowly. At first, she just blinked and looked around in confusion. Then her eyes focused on Jake, who was sitting nearby, watching her carefully. She tried to sit up quickly, but pain made her stop. Her broken arm was in, a simple bandage that Amy had made from medical supplies. When she saw this, her eyes went wide with surprise. "Easy," Jake said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe." The alien looked at him with bright green eyes that seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. She said something in her own language that Jake couldn't understand, but her tone sounded like a question. "Kate," Jake called. "Can you bring that translation device?" Kate floated over with a small computer that could translate basic words between human and Elvani languages. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. Jake pointed to himself. "Human, Jake." Then he pointed to her. "Elvani?" The woman listened to the computer translate his words. She looked at Jake with suspicion, then at Amy and Kate, who were both watching from a safe distance. "You saved me?" she asked through the translator. Her accent was strange but beautiful. "Yes," Jake replied. "Your ship was badly damaged. We brought you here and fixed your arm." The alien looked at her bandaged arm, then back at Jake. "Why?" It was such a simple question, but Jake found it hard to answer. Why had he risked everything to save an enemy? "Because you needed help," he said finally. The translator worked for a moment, then gave her Jake's answer in her own language. The woman stared at him like he had said something impossible. "I am your enemy," she said slowly. "Right now, you're hurt and far from home," Jake replied. "That makes you someone who needs help." The alien was quiet for a long time, thinking about this. Finally, she spoke again. "My name is Lyrelei Starweaver. I am—" She paused, as if deciding how much to tell them. "I am an officer in the Elvani fleet." "Nice to meet you, Lyrelei," Jake said. "This is Dr. Amy Ross and Kate Adams. We're from the human reconnaissance ship Starfall." Amy moved closer, still looking nervous. "How do you feel? Any pain besides your arm?" Lyra Lee watched Amy carefully as the doctor checked her injuries. You are a healer? A doctor, yes. I've never treated an Elvani before, but your body seems similar enough to ours. You could have let me die, Lyra Lee said quietly. Your people and mine are at war. War doesn't mean we have to stop being decent people, Jake replied. Over the next few hours, they learned more about each other. Lyra Lee was curious about everything on the human ship. She asked questions about their technology, their customs, and their reasons for fighting. Your people are very different from what I was taught, she admitted. We were told that humans are violent and cannot be trusted. What do you think now? Kate asked. Lyra Lee looked around the small ship. You saved my life when you could have taken me prisoner. You are treating my injuries even though I am your enemy. Either you are very unusual humans, or what I was taught was wrong. Jake was about to respond when Kate's sensors started beeping urgently. We have company, Kate announced. 3 ships approaching fast. 2 are human, 1 is Elvani. Amy looked worried. If they find her here... Hide me, Lyra Lee said quickly. If my people find me with you, they will assume I told you military secrets. And if your people find me... No, Jake said firmly. We're not hiding you. You haven't done anything. Wrong. Jake, be practical, Amy whispered. Command will want to know why we saved an enemy officer. This could end our careers. Before Jake could respond, the communication system crackled to life. Commander Lisa Stone's voice came through clearly. Starfall, this is Commander Stone on the Phoenix. We received your emergency beacon. What is your status? Jake looked at Lyra Lee, then at his crew. He made his decision. Commander, this is Sergeant Miller. We are alive, but our ship is disabled. We also have a rescued Elvani officer aboard who needs medical attention. There was a long silence. Then Commander Stone's voice came back, much colder than before. Did you say you have an enemy prisoner, Sergeant? Not a prisoner, ma'am. A rescue. She was dying in a damaged ship, and we couldn't just leave her. Another pause. Sergeant Miller, you will remain exactly where you are until we can assess this situation. Do not communicate with the Elvani vessel. But it was too late for that. The Elvani ship was already sending its own message. Human vessel, you are holding Her Royal Majesty Queen Lyra Lee Starweaver. Return her immediately or face the consequences. Jake felt his blood turn cold. He looked at Lyra Lee, who had gone very pale. Queen? Amy whispered. Lyra Lee met Jake's eyes. I am sorry, I could not tell you before. It would have put you in even more danger. You're the queen of the entire Elvani Empire? Kate asked in shock. Yes, Lyra Lee said quietly. And now both of our fleets will want to capture this ship. The humans will want to use me as a prisoner of war. My own people. She paused. Some of them may prefer that I never make it home alive. Jake didn't understand. Why would your own people want you dead? Because there are those who believe I am too weak to rule. If they can claim that I was captured and tortured by humans, it would give them an excuse to take my throne. The communication system came alive again. This time it was the Elvani ship. I am General Theron Nightbane, speaking for the Elvani Star Empire. Human ship, you have exactly 10 minutes to release Queen Lyra Lee, or we will open fire. Commander. Stone's voice cut in immediately. General Theron, this is Commander Stone of the Terran Federation. Any attack on our ship will be considered an act of war against a rescue vessel. Your people are already holding our queen prisoner, General Theron replied. We saved her life, Jake said into the communicator, even though he probably shouldn't have spoken without permission. She was dying and we helped her. Silence, human, General Theron snapped. You have no right to speak to your betters, but Lyra Lee had heard enough. She took the communicator from Jake. General Theron, this is your queen speaking. These humans found me dying in space and risked their own lives to save mine. They have treated me with honor and respect. You will not harm them, my queen. You have clearly been drugged or tortured. No human would help an Elvani without wanting something in return. Lyrelay looked at Jake with something like wonder in her eyes. Then you have much to learn about humans, General. I order you to stand down. I cannot do that, Your Majesty. You are clearly not thinking clearly. Jake realized what was happening. The general was using this situation to question Lyrelay's ability to rule, by claiming she had been compromised. By humans, he could argue that she was unfit to be queen. Lyrelay, Jake said quietly. Is this general someone you trust? She looked at him with sad eyes. I thought I did, but now I am not so sure. The next few minutes were tense, as both fleets positioned themselves around Jake's disabled ship. He found himself in the middle of a political situation that was much more complicated than a simple rescue. But as he looked at Lyrelay, Jake realized something important. She wasn't just a queen or an enemy anymore. She was someone who had been betrayed by people she trusted, just like humans sometimes were. And despite everything that divided their species, that made her someone worth protecting. Whatever happens, Jake told her, we won't let anyone hurt you, not even your own people. Lyrelay stared at him. Why would you do that? You barely know me. Because it's the right thing to do, Jake replied simply. For the first time since she had woken up, Lyrelay smiled. Commander Stone made the decision that surprised everyone. Instead of keeping Lyrelay as a prisoner, she agreed to escort the Queen back to Elvani space under a temporary ceasefire. It was a dangerous choice, but Stone believed it might be their only chance for peace. I'm going with her, Jake announced when they transferred to the larger human ship Phoenix. Absolutely not, Commander Stone replied. This is a diplomatic mission. We're sending trained ambassadors. With respect, ma'am, Queen Lyrelay trusts me. After what happened with her own general, that trust might be the only thing keeping this peace talk from falling apart. Lyrelay, who was standing nearby listening to the conversation, stepped forward. Commander Stone, I would feel much safer if Sergeant Miller accompanied us. He has proven his honor. Stone looked between them, clearly seeing something she hadn't expected. Very well. But Jake, you're there as security only. Don't get involved in politics you don't understand. The journey to Elvani space took 3 days. During that time, Jake and Lyrelay spent hours talking. She taught him basic words in her language, and he explained human customs that puzzled her. Your people have no noble families? She asked during one of their conversations. Not really, Jake replied. Some people have more money or power than others, but anyone can rise up if they work hard enough. That seems chaotic, Lyrelay said, but she sounded interested rather than disapproving. Maybe, but it means everyone has a chance to make something of themselves. What's it like being a queen? Lyrelay was quiet for a moment. Lonely, she said finally. Everyone wants something from you. No one speaks to you honestly because they're afraid or because they want to gain favor. Until I met you, I had forgotten what it was like to have someone simply tell me the truth. Jake felt something strange in his chest when she said that. He was starting to care about this alien queen in a way that went beyond just wanting to help her. When they reached Silver Moon, the Elvani homeworld, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The planet looked like something from a fairy tale. Cities made of crystal and living trees stretched as far as he could see. Everything seemed to glow with soft, beautiful light. It's incredible, Jake said as their shuttle descended toward the capital city. Wait until you see the palace, Lyrelay replied, but she looked nervous. Jake, I need to warn you about something. My court is very different from your human customs. There are many people who will see you as a barbarian or a threat. I'll try not to embarrass you, Jake said. That's not what I'm worried about, Lyrelay said quietly. The Elvani Palace was the most beautiful building Jake had ever seen. It seemed to be grown from a single massive tree, with rooms and halls carved into the living wood. Everywhere he looked, there were Elvani nobles in elegant clothes, watching the human visitors with curiosity and suspicion. But Jake noticed something else. Many of the nobles seemed more interested in watching Lyrelai than the humans. And not all of those looks were friendly. "Your Majesty," said a tall Elvani man who approached them in the main hall. He was dressed in expensive clothes and had the bearing of someone used to power. "We are so relieved to see you safe." "Prince Kyle," Lyrelai replied coolly. "I'm sure you are." Jake didn't need a translator to understand the tension between them. This Prince Kyle was clearly not happy to see Lyrelai return alive. "And these are the humans who rescued you?" Prince Kale looked at Jake and the small human diplomatic team with obvious distaste. "Yes. Sergeant Jake Miller saved my life when my own ship was destroyed," Lyrelai said firmly. "How fortunate," Prince Kale said in a tone that suggested he thought it was anything but fortunate. "Of course, there will need to be a full investigation of what happened. Some are questioning whether contact with humans has affected your judgment." Jake saw Lyrelai's hands clench into fists. He was starting to understand the political game being played here. That evening, Lyrelai showed Jake and the human team to their rooms in the palace. When they were alone, she explained the situation. "Prince Kale is my cousin. He has always believed he should be the ruler instead of me. If he can convince the High Council that I have been compromised by contact with humans, he can challenge my right to the throne." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means there could be a civil war," Lyrelai said sadly, "and it means that any chance for peace between our peoples would be destroyed." "What can we do?" Lyrelai looked at him with those green eyes that seemed to see right through him. "There is one thing, but you will think it's crazy. Try me. In our culture, a ruler can strengthen their position by choosing a mate who proves their wisdom and strength. If I were to choose someone who had demonstrated honor and courage," Jake realized what she was suggesting. "You want to marry me?" "Not really marry, not yet. But if I declared my intention to consider you as a potential mate, it would legitimize your actions in the eyes of my people. It would prove that humans can be honorable." Jake felt his head spinning. "Lyrelai, I'm just a sergeant in the human military. I don't know anything about being royal or politics or any of this." "You know about doing the right thing even when it's difficult," she replied. "You know about protecting people who can't protect themselves. In my world, those are the most important qualifications for leadership." Before Jake could respond, there was a loud commotion outside. Through the window, they could see Elvani soldiers surrounding the palace. Prince Kale was addressing a crowd of nobles in the courtyard below. "Citizens of the Empire," Kale's voice carried clearly through the night air. "Our queen has been corrupted by contact with the human barbarians. She is no longer fit to rule. I challenge her claim to the throne under the ancient laws." Lyrelai closed her eyes. "It has begun." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now Kale and I must both prove our right to rule. There will be tests, challenges, and ultimately a trial by combat if necessary." "Trial by combat?" "The challenger and the ruler each choose a champion to fight for them. Winner takes the throne." Jake looked out at the crowd of angry Elvani nobles. "And if you lose?" "Then Kale becomes king. Our people go back to war with yours, and you and your team will probably be executed as spies and kidnappers." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened since he first found Lyrelai dying in space. Then he made his decision. "Okay," he said. "Okay what?" "Okay, I'll be your potential mate or whatever you need me to be. And if it comes to a trial by combat, I'll be your champion." Lyrelai stared at him. "Jake, you don't understand. Kale is a trained warrior with hundreds of years of experience. You would be fighting with weapons you've never used, following rules. You don't know? Maybe, Jake said. But I've got something he doesn't have. What's that? Jake smiled. I'm too stubborn to know when I'm beaten. The next morning, Lyrelai made her announcement to the High Council. Standing before hundreds of the most powerful Elvani in the Empire, she declared that Sergeant Jake Miller had proven himself worthy of consideration as her mate through his acts of honor and courage. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Some nobles shouted in outrage at the idea of their queen mating with a human. Others seemed intrigued by the political implications. Prince Kale looked furious. This proves my point exactly, Kale declared. She has been so corrupted by human contact that she can no longer think clearly. No true Elvani queen would consider such a thing. Then let the ancient laws decide, Lyrelai replied calmly. I call for a formal trial to determine who is fit to rule. The High Council agreed. In 3 days, there would be a series of tests culminating in single combat between champions. If Lyrelai won, her position would be secure, and peace with the humans would be possible. If she lost, everything they had worked for would be destroyed. As Jake prepared for the most important fight of his life, he realized that he was no longer just fighting for peace between two species. He was fighting for the woman he was starting to love. Jake had 3 days to prepare for a fight that would decide the fate of 2 worlds. He had never felt more out of his depth in his life. Lady Arya Moonwhisper, Lyrelai's most trusted advisor, took charge of his training. She was an older Elvani, woman with silver hair and kind eyes who seemed to be one of the few nobles who genuinely cared about the queen. Elvani combat is not just about strength, Arya explained as she showed Jake the traditional weapons. It is about grace, honor, and mental discipline. Your opponent will try to make you angry so you make mistakes. Jake picked up one of the curved Elvani swords. It was lighter than human weapons, but felt strange in his hands. How long has Prince Kale been training with these? About 200 years, Arya said calmly. Jake nearly dropped the sword. 200 years? And I have 3 days? Yes, but you have something he does not, Arya said with a slight smile. You fight to protect someone you care about. He fights only for power. Meanwhile, Dr. Amy Ross was working with the palace healers to understand Jake's human physiology. She wanted to find any advantage that might help him survive the coming battle. Human muscles work differently than Elvani ones, Amy explained to Jake during a break in training. You're stronger in short bursts, but they have better endurance. You'll need to end the fight quickly. No pressure, Jake muttered. That evening, Lyrelai found Jake sitting alone in the palace gardens. He was staring at the alien stars, thinking about home. Are you having second thoughts? She asked softly. About fighting for you? No, Jake replied. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. I'm just one human against someone who's been training longer than my entire country has existed. Lyrelai sat down beside him. Jake, you don't have to do this. I could find another way. What other way? If I don't fight, Kale wins by default. Your people go back to war with mine, and a lot of good people on both sides die. You could die tomorrow, Lyrelai said quietly. Jake looked at her beautiful face in the alien starlight. Maybe. But at least I'd die knowing I tried to do something that mattered. Lyrelai was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked Jake. She reached over and took his hand. In my culture, we do not show affection in public, she said. But I want you to know that what started as political necessity has become something real for me. If you survive tomorrow, I would like to explore what that means. Jake felt his heart racing. And if I don't survive? Then I will make sure that humans and Elvani remember Jake Miller as a hero who died trying to bring peace to the galaxy. The next morning, thousands of Elvani gathered in the ancient arena to witness the trial by combat. Jake had never seen so many aliens in one place. Their voices created a strange musical sound that was both beautiful and intimidating. Captain Ben. Carter and the rest of the human diplomatic team sat in a special section looking nervous. Commander Stone had insisted on coming to witness the event, and Jake could see the worry in her eyes. Prince Kale entered the arena first, wearing traditional Elvani armor that looked like it was made of living metal. He was tall and graceful, moving with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. The crowd cheered for him. Then it was Jake's turn. He wore simpler armor that Arya had found for him, and carried the curved sword he had been practicing with. When he entered the arena, the crowd went quiet. He could feel thousands of eyes studying him, judging him. An ancient Elvani judge explained the rules. The fight would continue until one fighter yielded or could no longer continue. No outside. Weapons or assistance were allowed. The winner would determine the rightful ruler of the Elvani Empire. "Do you have any last words before we begin?" Prince Kale asked Jake with a mocking smile. "Yeah," Jake replied. "Try not to take this personally. I'm just doing my job." Kale's smile faded. He clearly hadn't expected Jake to be so calm. The judge raised his hand, then dropped it. The fight began. Kyle attacked immediately, his sword moving so fast it was almost a blur. Jake barely managed to block the first few strikes, and he could already tell he was outmatched in terms of skill. But as the fight continued, Jake began to notice patterns in Kale's attacks. The prince was incredibly skilled, but he fought like someone who expected to win easily. He was showing off for the crowd instead of focusing on ending the fight quickly. Jake started using tactics that no Elvani would ever think of. Instead of trying to match Kale's graceful sword work, he fought dirty. He kicked dirt, used his environment, and fought like his life depended on it, which it did. The crowd began to murmur as Jake managed to land his first hit, a shallow cut on Kale's arm. The prince looked shocked that a human had actually hurt him. "You fight without honor," Kale snarled. "I fight to win," Jake replied, pressing his attack. But Kale was too experienced to let anger control him for long. He began to fight more seriously, and Jake found himself being pushed back. A cut on his shoulder, then another on his leg. Jake was losing blood and getting tired. Just when it looked like Kale was about to win, something unexpected happened. General Theron, who had been watching from the noble section, suddenly stood up and shouted something in the Elvani language. Jake didn't understand the words, but he saw the effect on the crowd. Many of the nobles looked shocked and angry. Lyrelai was on her feet, pointing at the general and speaking rapidly. "What's happening?" Jake called out, still keeping his sword up against Kyle. "Theron just tried to signal someone in the crowd to interfere with the fight," Lyrelai called back. "He's been working with Kale all along. He planned my assassination from the beginning." The revelation sent shockwaves through the arena. The judge called for a pause in the combat while the accusations were investigated, but Kale wasn't willing to wait. "This changes nothing," he snarled, attacking Jake again with renewed fury. But Jake had learned something important in that moment. Kale wasn't just fighting for the throne. He was fighting to cover up his crimes. That made him desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Jake changed his tactics again. Instead of trying to defend against Kale's attacks, he started taking risks. He accepted cuts and wounds in order to get close enough for his own strikes. The crowd gasped as Jake managed to disarm Kale, sending the prince's sword flying across the arena. But Kale wasn't finished. He pulled a hidden knife and lunged at Jake. Jake caught Kale's wrist, stopping the knife inches from his chest. For a moment, they struggled, both fighters bleeding and exhausted. "Yield!" Jake said through gritted teeth. "Never!" Kale replied. "Then I'm sorry," Jake said, and used a human wrestling move to throw Kale to the ground. The prince hit the arena floor hard and didn't get up. The crowd went completely silent. Jake stood over his fallen opponent, breathing hard and bleeding from multiple wounds. The judge approached and checked on Kale, then raised Jake's hand in victory. The arena exploded in noise, some cheering, some shouting in anger. But Jake only had eyes for Lirelei, who was running toward him with tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she said as she reached him. "You actually did it." "Yeah. Well," Jake said with a tired smile. "I told you I was too stubborn to know when I was beaten." As the healers tended to his wounds, Jake watched as General Theron was arrested for his part in the conspiracy. The evidence of his betrayal was clear, and Prince Kael's claim to the throne died with his defeat. Jake had won, more than just a fight. He had won the right for humans and Elvani to build a better future together. The healing chambers in the Elvani Palace were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The walls themselves seemed to glow with a soft, warm light that somehow made his wounds heal faster. Dr. Amy Ross was fascinated by the alien medical technology, while Jake was just grateful to be alive. "The cuts will heal completely in a few days," Lady Arya told him as she checked his bandages. "Elvani healing methods are very advanced, and your human constitution is surprisingly strong." Jake flexed, his shoulder testing the movement. "Strong enough to survive being married to a queen?" Arya smiled. "That remains to be seen." The political situation had changed dramatically since Jake's victory in the arena. With General Theron arrested and Prince Kael defeated, many Elvani nobles who had opposed Lirelei began to reconsider their positions. The fact that a human had fought honorably for their queen made them question their assumptions about Jake's people. Commander Stone had arrived with a full diplomatic team from the Terran Federation. She found Jake sitting in the palace gardens, watching Elvani children play in the crystal fountains. "You realize what you've done, don't you?" Stone asked, sitting down beside him. "Want to fight?" Jake replied. "Change the course of history," Stone corrected. "The Elvani High Council is seriously considering a peace treaty. After 3 years of war, we might actually have a chance to end this." Jake watched the alien children laughing and playing. They looked so much like human children, despite their pointed ears and silver-tinted skin. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you have a choice to make," Stone said. "You can come back to human space as a hero. There will be medals, promotions, probably a book deal. Or I can stay here with Lirelei. The Elvani Queen has made it clear that she wants you as her official consort. It would be a permanent position, Jake. You'd be giving up your human citizenship, your military career, everything you've known." Jake had been thinking about this decision for days. It wasn't easy to choose between two entire worlds. That evening, Lirelei found him in his room, packing his few belongings. "Have you decided?" she asked quietly. Jake looked at her standing in the doorway. In the soft light of the Elvani lamps, she looked like something from a dream. But he had learned that she was also strong, intelligent, and genuinely cared about her people. "I have some conditions," he said. Lirelei raised an eyebrow. "You're negotiating with the queen of the Elvani Empire?" "I'm negotiating with the woman I love," Jake replied, and was rewarded with a beautiful smile. "What are your conditions?" "First, I want to serve as an official ambassador between humans and Elvani. If I'm going to be here, I want to help build real peace between our peoples." "Agreed. What else?" "I want to keep some of my human customs and traditions. I'm not going to become a different person just because I'm living on an alien world." "That's reasonable. Anything else?" Jake took a deep breath. "I want our children to know both of their heritages, human and Elvani. They should be proud of both sides of their family." Lirelei's eyes went wide. "Children? You're thinking that far ahead? If we're going to do this, we should do it right," Jake said. "I'm not interested in a political marriage. I want the real thing." Lirelei crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "Jake Miller, you continue to surprise me. Yes to all of your conditions. But I have one of my own." "What's that?" "You have to learn to dance properly. Elvani royal ceremonies require a lot of dancing. and I refuse to be embarrassed by my consort stepping on my feet. Jake laughed. Deal. The wedding ceremony took place 3 months later. It was unlike anything either species had ever seen before. Human and Elvani traditions were blended together in a celebration that lasted for 3 days. Captain Ben Carter served as Jake's best man, while Lady Aria stood with Lyrelai. Dr. Amy Ross had become fast friends with the Elvani healers and served as the human representative in the ceremony. Commander Stone gave a speech about how 2 people from different worlds had found a way to build a bridge between their species. The Elvani high priest talked about the ancient prophecies that spoke of unity between the star peoples. But for Jake, the most important moment was when he and Lyrelai exchanged vows. They spoke in both languages, promising to honor each other's differences while building something new together. I promise to see the universe through your eyes, Jake said, and to help you see it through mine. I promise to be your partner in all things, Lyrelai replied, and to build a future worthy of both our peoples. The Treaty of Silvermoon was signed the next day. It officially ended the war between the Terran Federation and the Elvani Star Empire. The document was signed by leaders from both species, but everyone knew it existed because a human sergeant had been willing to risk everything to save a dying alien. 5 years later, Jake stood on the balcony of the royal palace, watching the sunset paint the crystal city in shades of gold and pink. His son, Alex, was playing at his feet. The boy had his mother's pointed ears and green eyes, but his father's stubborn determination. "Daddy, tell me about Earth," Alex said in perfect human English. "What do you want to know?" Jake asked, picking up his son. "Is it really made of dirt and water instead of crystal and light?" Jake laughed. "Yes, but it's beautiful in its own way. Someday, when you're older, we'll visit so you can see for yourself." Lyrelai joined them on the balcony, carrying their infant daughter. Baby Sarah had human-looking ears but silver-tinted skin that glowed softly in the evening light. The council meeting went well, Lyrelai reported. "The joint exploration mission to the Andromeda sector has been approved. Human and Elvani ships will explore together." "That's great news," Jake said. "Any word from Amy about the medical exchange program?" "Dr. Ross says the first group of human medical students should arrive next month, and our healers are excited to learn human surgical techniques." Jake looked out at the city where humans and Elvani now worked side by side. Children of both species played together in the parks. Scientists shared knowledge, artists collaborated on new forms of beauty, and soldiers who had once been enemies now protected each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyrelai asked quietly. "Giving up your old life for this one?" Jake looked at his alien wife and their hybrid children. He thought about all the friends he had made among the Elvani people, and all the ways his 2 species had learned from each other. "Never," he said firmly. "This is exactly where I belong," as if to prove his point. Kate Adams's voice came over the communication system from the joint human-Elvani space station in orbit. "Your Majesties, we're receiving the first transmissions from the Andromeda expedition. They've found something incredible out there." Jake and Lyrelai looked at each other with excitement. Their universe was vast and full of wonders they had yet to discover. But whatever they found, they would face it together. Human and Elvani, united in their quest to explore the stars. The war was over. The future had begun, and it all started because one human had been too stubborn to let someone die alone in the darkness of space.